Hey, welcome, and how you doing today? I'm gonna give it a few seconds for people to jump on the live if you do, and if you do drop where you're watching from, and are you having a good day, a good week, good weather, all that stuff. Um, well, anyway, I want to talk about something real quick. A lot of people are using AI wrong. They're typing basic prompts and getting basic answers, and then saying AI doesn't work for them, and that's like buying a gym membership and only using the parking lot, not understanding the logic. You could go inside and get results. Um, Excuse me. So what I do and what I teach at Promptify is prompt engineering. That can sound complicated, but it literally just means knowing how to talk to AI. So it gives you something you can actually use. Um, Today I'm gonna show you in a topic, and by the end of this, you'll be able to do this yourself in about 5 minutes. Everything I show you is inside Promptify, and the link is in my bio. Um, so a sentence to summarize what we'll talk about today is a safer AI study workflow syllabus to study session. So taking, like I said, a syllabus into turning into a study session. So we're gonna, aka, kind of like showing students how to use AI for structure and review while anchoring every output in the syllabus, lecture notes, materials, and instructor. So I'm not using AI to guess my exam. I'm using it to make one course objective, my notes, and a 25-minute block easier to study. So, as usual, I'm gonna speak on all the steps regarding this. And then I'm gonna show you a prompt that basically is a shortcutted version of all these steps, and then it will also show the result. Uh, and it's gonna be more than one prompt. It's gonna be actually all of the short form prompts for specifically today combined to create an actual study system, right? So the main topic that I said, all those sorts make up that. So this is me, giving away another free system that you can copy if it's applicable to you. Um, so so here's the thing, right? Let's say that let's just give like some examples, right? So let's say you have, whether this is applicable to not to you or not with your study notes, depends on what you have. Let's say you have uh you have an objective, you have cards, you have a gap question, and you have a 25-minute block. Those are the things you have to work with. 25-minute block being the time frame, and then the things prior to that are things you're just addressing, like the objective, what you're trying to study, flashcards, and a gap question. So let's say everything you see comes from the course material that you already have. So, or I'll have an example on the screen when I show each prompt, right? So let's say from the first prompt, there's one syllabus objective. First, I identify the skill. It's compare, it's explain, it's solve, not a vague study chapter. Or it's from study chapter 4. That's just going to be in the example, right? Um, Source lines. So I'm just reading through my outline. So source lines let me reopen the lecture note instead of memorizing an uncheckable answer. Okay. The source lines let me reopen the lecture note instead of memorizing an uncheckable answer. AKA, and I'll show you, this is from the second short. I'm going to show that again. So this short was talking about how you are using flashcards, and there's a source line that helps you. Where you literally reopen the actual lecture note, or aka the exact answer. So the answer is not even in some different wording; it's in the actual wording. So you're going exactly to the source when using the flashcards, literally. So here's the thing: for short 3, these are review questions, not a prediction of what appears on the exam. But the review questions are obviously going to be helpful because you're getting more practice with this topic and familiarizing yourself with it more, which will just help you be able to recall information from what you studied. And yes, some of this stuff might be on the exam, but you're just trying to submerge yourself more in this information and just know it, or remember it or recall it very well, right? And or recall your understanding of it. If your understanding of it is well, that can just help you overall, right? So, and that was for 3. For 4, it's going to be start a visible 25-minute timer board. Your material is different. Excuse me. If your material is different, swap the timing, not the final gap log. So it could be 25. It could be different, right? Depends on what your material is. And then for the 5th prompt, and some of the stuff is not kind of clear when I'm saying it. So when I show the prompts on the screen, it's going to clarify everything. I'm going to do it in order so you can see this is like an actual system. So for short 5, the output is a question for your instructor, not a substitute one. So that's just like a self-explanatory, and you're asking a question that obviously they'll be able to clearly answer. It's like a direct question, right? Which I'll showcase in the prompt. And as I said during the short, but now I'm going to show it again. All of this in order. And then checking this real quick on that. So I'm about to flip to the screen. I'm just checking something real quick. All right. So basically, also just make sure that the information. Say this before I flip to the screen. So make sure that the information that you're using is make sure it's something that's valid or legit, and it's checked against the course material. So you have the exact wording or the exact facts. Don't just try to remember stuff off the top of your head, obviously, when you're filling this stuff in. So what I'll do now is I'm going to flip to the screen and read literally all the prompts over and the results that I got for those prompts so that you can just see how this will work in a system all together. So all right, ready? I'm going to flip to the screen. I'm going to flip back a few times. There's times I have to speak with AI and those prompts were not relevant to this. We're not relevant to what I'm doing here. Because there's times I had to input more information because ChatGPT forgot it. That just happens sometimes. So that it can then give me the results of the prompt. So I'm going to flip up to the screen in a moment. Just do the first one. The second one, I had to fill back in. So I'm going to just skip over that stuff and then get to the second prompt. So that this flows in order so that you're not seeing information that's not even relevant to this video, which could confuse you, obviously. Not discrediting your intelligence. It's just why I have stuff on the screen that shouldn't be there. So here's the first prompt here. Turn this course objective into a study checklist. Use only the action verbs in the objective. Include a final step. Verify what course materials. Do not add facts, definitions, or likely exam questions. The objective is compare classical and operant conditioning and explain how reinforcement changes behavior. The answer shows 3 different points that answer exactly what is spoke on in the prompt based on the information it gave. So turn this course objective into a study checklist. Use only the action verbs, the objective, and the include a final step. Verify what course materials. Do not add facts, definite, blah, blah. So the objective was compare classical and operant conditioning. So that handled the objective. So in the prompt when it says objective, that's like the first line. Um, and then the second point was explain how reinforcement changes behavior. Um, explain how reinforcement changes behavior was like the second thing it spoke on. Um, and then verify course materials. That's like a final step. Um, so that, excuse me, that was already said in the instructions, but the things prior to that were the objectives, which was comparing classical and operant conditioning and explain how reinforcement changes behavior. So you have that in bullet points. So basically just organizing some notes, right? Now, the second one was create 8 flashcards from these notes only. Whoops. So here's the thing, right? I had to, this is where I'm going to put the screen down, and then just I'm going to scroll to where I got the answer. So when I put in that prompt, the chat, as you can see, let me just show you. ChatGPT forgot what I said. It says the notes are still only placeholder, paste your own notes, so I can't create flashcards without inventing content, paste the notes. And I'll resend the flashcards, it says, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down to where I finally got the notes in there so that I can continue reading with the second prompt and onwards. So here we go. Same prompt. Create 8 flashcards from these notes only. For every answer, include the exact note, heading, or sentence it came from. If a concept is incomplete in the notes, write review source instead of completing it. In notes is paste your own notes. I have the notes pasted that would be used for these flashcards. So using fictional notes from above, flashcard 1 is what does classical conditioning involve? A classical conditioning involves learning through associations between stimuli. Source is classical conditioning, and it's the exact sentence. Now, I could read through all this. It's not really relevant for this prompt, but what happens is it's 8 different flashcards, right? For every answer, include the exact note, heading, or sentence it came from. So what happens is there's flashcard 1. It says there's for every answer, include the note, heading, and sentence it came from. So there's the source it came from. Note heading could be kind of like the question is discussing the topic, and then there's the answer. And the answer is coming from like the exact notes, right? Now, if a concept is incomplete, in the notes, right, review source instead of completing it. What I'll do is I'll just read through all of them. It's not really relevant, but I'll just read through the example. Let me just check to see if one said source. I think all of them might have just been filled in. So I didn't use. So excuse me, I didn't use a variable of excuse me, one didn't having an answer. But if one did, it would have just said that, so you wouldn't be guessing about whether you have the answer to that or not. So flashcard 2 is what does operant conditioning involve? Operant conditioning involves behavior being influenced by its consequences, and the source would be from operant conditioning, the exact sentence. Let's say operant conditioning is the name of the book, the textbook or whatever, right? Flashcard 3 is what does positive reinforcement do? The answer is positive reinforcement increases a behavior by adding something after that behavior. The source is positive reinforcement, and it's the exact sentence. Flashcard 4 is what does negative reinforcement do? The answer is negative reinforcement increases behavior by removing something after the behavior. The source is negative reinforcement, and that's the exact sentence. Flashcard 5 is what does reinforcement do? The question is what does reinforcement do? The answer is reinforcement increases the likelihood of a behavior occurring again. The source is reinforcement, and the exact sentence. These are just names of made up textbooks, or maybe sections or chapters in a textbook, or a definition area in a textbook, right? Or an encyclopedia or whatever. Flashcard 6, the question is, what is extinction? The answer is extinction. Extinction occurs when a previously reinforced behavior is no longer reinforced. The source is extinction, and that's the exact sentence. Extinction being like I said, definition or the name of a textbook. a definition in a textbook, a section, or a chapter, whatever, wherever this data came from in this made up example I just gave. Flashcard 7, the question is, what can behavior change based on? And the answer is behavior can change based on its consequences. Source behavior, and it's the exact sentence. Flashcard 8 is, what does conditioning describe? The question is, what does conditioning describe? The answer is, conditioning describes a process of learning, and the source is conditioning, and it's an exact sentence. Excuse me. Now, what this did, again, it created 8 flashcards, and for every answer, it included the exact note heading or sentence it came from. If a concept is incomplete in the notes, it would write source instead of completing it. It didn't do that, so I didn't actually leave one empty. I should have actually put a variable of just leave one empty for an on accident, where the information could not, the information wasn't complete. I should have done that just to show an example. But obviously, you would have your own version of that. And if something could not be verified, that would just show up there, obviously, right? Oops. So this happened again. So for the third one, I'm going to have to scroll to where I finally got the information input. All right, ready? So for the third prompt, it says, compare the study guide with these class notes. List questions the study guide does not answer yet, using only terms found in the notes. Do not answer the questions or predict the quiz. And then you paste the study guide and you paste the class notes. So the study guide says made up because I had it make something up. I either use place. I use the keyword placeholder or made up or whatever, and I type in information and then I have it use that. So that's just like the title, but it gives me something to work with. So for the example, so study guide made a define classical conditioning, define operant conditioning, define positive reinforcement, and define reinforcement. And then, so that's a study guide made up. The class notes made up is, I'm going to make sure I have everything in the video. So class notes made up is classical conditioning. Classical conditioning involves learning through associations between stimuli. Operant conditioning involves behavior being influenced by its consequences. Positive reinforcement increases a behavior by adding something after a behavior. Negative reinforcement, a negative reinforcement increases behavior by removing something after the behavior. Reinforcement increases the likelihood of a behavior occurring again. Extinction occurs when a previously reinforced behavior is no longer reinforced. Behavior can change based on its consequences. Conditioning describes the process of learning. I just wanted to say real quick, this entire video might not fit on Instagram. This happened yesterday. It only uploaded 20 minutes, so I'm just throwing that in there real quick. But the rest, the entire long form will be on YouTube and TikTok. So I'm just going to continue. Questions? Did I say all the class notes? I know I said extension. Let me just say this. Extension occurs when a previously reinforced behavior is no longer reinforced. I don't know if I read the next two. Let me just do that. Behavior can change based on its own consequences. Conditioning describes a process of learning. Just want to also say real quick, these notes are based on the notes prior as well. So it's just following the same topic, but showing you how all these notes can be applied throughout the system from the same type of subject, as if it was the same student using the system to organize notes, right? Questions the study guide does not yet answer is, how does negative reinforcement increase a behavior? What is extinction? And how can a behavior change based on its consequences? And what does conditioning describe? All right, so next one is create one 25-minute study block for this target. Use only the listed materials. Include retrieval, review, practice, and final gap log. Do not introduce new topics or resources. Target is this. Excuse me, there's a fly on the screen. Do not introduce new topics or resources. Target is distinguished positive and negative reinforcement materials. Lecture note. The target is distinguished positive and negative reinforcement, and the materials are lecture notes, textbook pages. It's going to be 42 to 48, and there's 6 assigned practice questions. So for the 25-minute study block, from 0 to 5 minutes is retrieval without looking at your materials. Write one that distinguishes positive reinforcement from negative reinforcement. Check your answer against the lecture notes. For 5 to 12 minutes, it's review textbook pages 42 to 48. Revisit the relevant lecture notes. Only on distinguishing and positive. Focus on only distinguishing positive and negative reinforcement. Shows like a little graph there and a picture and everything. 12 minutes to 21 minutes you practice. Complete 6 assigned practice questions. For each question, identify whether it tests the distinction between positive and negative reinforcement. And 21 to 25 gap log. What you could not recall, which practice questions you missed or felt unsure about, and what you need to review, again, in the lecture notes or textbook pages 42 to 48. So that's that. That's the 25-minute study block for this target. 25-minute study block for this target. It uses only listed materials. It includes retrieval. It includes review, practice, and a final gap log. So there's the retrieval, the review. The retrieval is 0 to 5 minutes. The review is 5 to 12 minutes. The practice is 15 to 21 minutes, and the gap log is 21 to 25 minutes. And it does not introduce new topics or resources. So it's taken from what we already have so far, obviously. So, and then 5 is based only on these notes. Draft one specific question I can ask in office hours. State what I understand, the exact distinction I am confused about, and one note-based example. Do not answer the question. Then you'd paste your notes. I've spoken to ChatGPT and it remembered this time, so it input. Or did it? Let me just make sure. Okay. So what I understand is, in the answer, what I understand is, I understand what positive reinforcement increases. I understand that positive reinforcement increases a behavior by adding something after the behavior, while negative reinforcement increases a behavior by removing something after the behavior. What I'm confused about the exact distinction between adding something and removing something when identifying positive versus negative reinforcement. My question: how do I distinguish positive reinforcement from negative reinforcement when both increase a behavior? And note-based example is positive reinforcement increases a behavior by adding something after the behavior, while negative reinforcement increases behavior by removing something after the behavior. Just think real quick. Okay. And so what this answer did was based on only the notes, it drafted one specific question I can ask in office hours. Based on these notes, it drafted one specific question I can ask in office hours. It stated what I understand. It stated the exact distinction I'm confused about. And it stated one note-based example. And it do not answer the question. So that's exactly what was shown here. Here, what I understand, what I'm confused about, my question, and note-based example. And I already read all that stuff that it explains each of those 4 points. Now, if you like access to high-quality prompts like this and more, you can find them inside Promptify. It's free to start, and the link is in the bio. If there's anything I did say today that was helpful, that is amazing, and I hope you have a great day.